Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 18.6 released to the public earlier this week, and iOS 26 Beta 4 and Public Beta 1 have been out for over a week and a half. But there's even more features to talk about since both of them have been released. We'll talk about some Apple news as well as the overall experience, and not just my experience, but your experience based off the YouTube community poll, where at the time of this video there's over 25,000 votes and 283 comments. I've gone through all the comments to determine whether or not maybe you should update to iOS 18.6, what the experience is like, bugs, and more. But be sure to stick around toward the end of the video where I'll read some of your comments from this as well. Now this week, Apple brought out its video shopping service in more places. It's now available in India this week, and you can see they announced it here on the Apple Newsroom. Apple introduces Shop with a Specialist over video in India. So if you've been wanting to do this, I'll link this in the description below, but you can see more information about it here, where you can shop with an Apple specialist via video. Now, Apple had their quarterly earnings call this week, and there was a lot of good news. I thought we'd go over a few points worth pointing out, and Apple made $23.44 billion profit on $94 billion in revenue, which was over $8 billion more than the same time last year. Apple also announced that it sold its 3 billionth iPhone, so that's pretty incredible. I'm sure I've contributed to at least a little bit of that, but many people around the world, of course, have upgraded throughout the years, and 3 billion is pretty incredible. Tim Cook also said, "We're making good progress on the more personalized Siri. As we've said before, we expect to release these features next year." This is according to Tim Cook. So those of you that wanted the new upgraded Siri with context, you won't have that option until next year, it seems. They also said they're more open to buying an AI company if they think it will help them with AI along the way. There's been some rumors about maybe Apple doing this, and so we could see something like that in the near future. Also this year, Apple said that iPhone 16 is more popular than iPhone 15 was last year. So it looks like they're selling more. It has a different design, so maybe that helped a little bit. But overall, it seems like it's a little bit more popular. And also per the earnings call, Tim Cook said that they'll be opening more stores in India this year and the United Arab Emirates. Tim Cook also said that iOS 26 Developer Beta is the most popular developer beta ever. Now, as one of the 3 original people covering iOS with everything Apple Pro and iDevice help and myself, I've obviously been long interested in betas for a long time. Now, of course, some have gone away, like everything Apple Pro, others have come in and made similar videos, but either way, it's something that I'm interested in and many other people seem to be interested in as well. So I'm not sure if this means there's more developers because there's more people making apps, or it's because Apple no longer charges $99 to download the beta as a developer and people just aren't waiting for public beta 1. But either way, I'm happy to see more people interested in it. And of course, I'm sure we'll see more and more of that as more and more people have iPhones, as there's over 3 billion of them that have been sold, like I said. The important thing, though, is to remember it's still a beta and in the works and not finished. So definitely keep that in mind. Submit feedback if you're having issues, but it's great to see so many people using these, trying them out, and hopefully making it better for us as we're testing it out for Apple, providing feedback and more. Now, as far as new features, there's a couple new things worth mentioning. One of them has to do with copy and paste. If I go into Notes, and I've already copied something, if I go ahead and paste, there's now a delete option right next to it. So I can delete that from the clipboard. And this makes me think maybe we'll have a clipboard in future updates here, as we do have it in macOS as well. But we can paste here, and then if we press and hold again, we can then delete and get rid of what we had there. So you'll see paste again. And so we have that delete option now. Also in the Calculator app, there's some subtle changes. So if we go into Calculator, when we press a button like plus or minus, so plus or minus turns yellow, you can see it's a little bit more emphasized this time around. And these colors change throughout. So backspace, things like that, you'll see colors change. There we go. And things just change a little bit based on what you're tapping on. So it's a small change, but they're from gray to yellow and everything else. There's also a new splash screen many of us saw for the first time this week, and that's when we went into the App Store. If we go into the App Store on the iPhone 11, we should get it here, where it says what's new in the App Store and Apple Arcade. More granular age ratings, accessibility nutrition labels, and top played games chart. So that's something new that many people have started seeing this week. Another thing found in the code of iOS 26 by my friend Steve Mosier is adaptive temperature hidden in iOS 26 Beta's Home app. You'll see it says just as Maps learns your daily routines, HomeKit will soon learn your comings and goings, predicting when you're rolling in the driveway or headed out of town for days on end, and automatically tweak your thermostat to match. So it will be able to do things like this if you had a smart thermostat. Of course, you would have to allow it to have access to do that, but that's a feature that will be available, it looks like, in iOS 26. Also in iOS 26, in Apple CarPlay, if you're getting a Siri suggestion within CarPlay and you press and hold on that suggestion, you'll now get the option to clear it for the current session. So that's something that seems to be new. Now, iPhone 17 keeps having quite a few leaks this week. The first one is someone caught what appears to be the iPhone 17 in the wild. So this is someone testing, it appears. We don't know 100% as Apple hasn't confirmed it either way, but it looks like it's legitimate. Also, this week we saw what could be new colors for the iPhone 17 lineup. This was posted by Sonny Dixon on X, and supposedly we're going to have a new blue and orange color as well. So if these turn out to be true, I'm curious which one you would prefer. I kind of like that blue an awful lot, but maybe orange would be something new to try out as well. But let me know what you think of those in the comments below. Now, as far as releases this week, Apple released Safari 26 Beta for macOS Sequoia and macOS Sonoma. Those are now available, and they add support for things such as HDR images, web GPU support, and other features. Also, we got an updated AirPods Beta. If you're running the AirPods Beta, the latest update has a B at the end of the build. So if we go in here, now that we're connected, go into my AirPods Pro 2 with USB-C, scroll to the bottom, you'll see the latest build is 8A324B. This supposedly fixes a few additional things. However, I've noticed some issues we'll talk about in a little bit. But it's only available currently for beta testers on iOS 26 with AirPods Pro 2, both Lightning and USB-C, as well as AirPods 4, both 4 and 4 with active noise cancellation. As far as other releases, well, maybe we'll see an iOS 18.7 Beta 1. I'm sort of doubtful on that at this point. We're not seeing a whole lot in iOS 18.6, but we could see that. And then also iOS 26 Beta 5 and iOS 26 Public Beta 2 is something I would expect this coming week. So maybe on Monday or Tuesday, we'll get updates for that. Hopefully some refinements as well. Now, when it comes to iOS 18.6, we'll talk about the experience in just a moment, but there's a couple new things to mention. The first thing is there's new enterprise features. You'll see this on Apple's enterprise website. I'll link it in the description, but you'll see they have two new things here that they've added with managed apps are now able to browse managed locations in the files picker, and the certificate picker no longer fails to display for single sign-on web applications. So that's specific to iOS 18.6, some things they've updated there. I would love to see notes more detailed like this, maybe for iOS 18.6 altogether though. There's also security updates, over 20 security updates in iOS 18.6. Now that Apple's updated the website, you can see all of them here from accessibility, core media playback. We'll keep scrolling. You'll see Model I/O, WebKit, and everything else. So lots of information here. I'll link it in the description below, but definitely makes it an important update. Now, as far as the overall experience, well, there's overwhelming sentiment from users on iOS 18.6 that it's stable, smooth, and is a significant improvement over iOS 18.5. It solved many issues from general bugs to overheating issues to battery life, and only a few people report a couple micro stutters here and there. Some people with notifications are noticing that when they're stacked, they're a little bit glitchy, but it seems to be okay here, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of stacked ones here as well. So you'll see if we collapse that, tap on it, it seems to be okay, but some people are having issues with that. The only other thing I'm seeing is the wallpaper bug in iOS 18.6. Now, it's not as evident here on this wallpaper, but if you have something super vibrant, it will still dim in the background, but not as much as it used to, and it looks like that's fixed on iOS 26. But overall, it's a very good experience. We'll take a look at the overall performance as well as battery life in just a moment. Now, iOS 26 Beta 4 re-release and Public Beta 1 are generally pretty good as far as early betas, but definitely a ways off from being released to the public. The current #1 issue you're reporting is issues with performance and stability. There's random resprings throughout. I had that the other day. I've had it multiple times since its release, where it will just reboot or reboot the home screen and sometimes just reboot altogether. So definitely some odd issues. It doesn't really seem to be anything I could pinpoint and reproduce, but it happens from time to time. Also, some describe the experience as 30 to 60 Hz, not 120 Hz. When I first installed it, it seemed much smoother, but things like ProMotion, this does not look like ProMotion is ramping up and down. It seems very slow. A reboot will fix it for a while, but then it returns. We're also seeing a lot of slowness. You can see it here where it's just a little bit stuttery and things are slow in general. Siri seems to have issues where it doesn't respond, although it's responding right there. Mail sometimes is missing the select button, but I don't like what they've done with the new one. If we go into Mail, and you'll see within Mail, the three-dot menu in the upper right, we can go to Select, and it sometimes just isn't there for some people. Now, it's always been there for me. I'm not a big fan of this being a second step where you have to go into it and tap Select. You can use two fingers to select, but either way, I would like the Select button right there. Also, audio seems to be dropping. Music still has some issues stopping playing. I'll explain that in a moment. And CarPlay is still an issue for some. In fact, I find it very laggy, whether you're in Apple Maps and especially in things like Google Maps. It's just super laggy. And so lately, I've actually been using the in-car version of navigation or sometimes Android Auto just because it's been so laggy. And you can see more of that lag here. Now with AirPods in the new beta, I've had a few moments listening to music or watching a YouTube video where the video and music continues, but the audio in the AirPods just stops. If you switch to the iPhone speaker or the Mac speaker, it works fine. And to fix this, I have to put the AirPods back in the case, close the case, then take them back out, reconnect, and it works fine. I've had this happen about 3 times, I think, at this point, a couple times with the Mac, once with the iPhone. I was mowing the lawn, they just stopped working for no reason. So definitely an issue from time to time, and that's with the latest beta as well. Now, when it comes to the overall heat and thermals, well, iOS 18.6 seems to fix most of those issues. In fact, this device is nice and cool on iOS 18.6, but on iOS 26 Beta 4, it still randomly heats up, even though it's nice and cool right now. But let's go ahead and run benchmarks, as many people actually suggested, so we can see. I did run them again, but let's go ahead and run them right now, see what we get, and then take a look at the overall thermals while it's about halfway through. So we're about halfway through the benchmarks. Let's go ahead and flip this over and take a look at the overall temperatures. In fact, it's not that hot. I would expect them to be a little bit hotter right now, but iOS 18.6 is doing well. You can see this with the thermal camera. So on iOS 26 Beta 4, we're at about 40 degrees Celsius at the hottest point. And on iOS 18.6, we're at about 38 degrees Celsius at the hottest point. They've reduced it by a couple degrees on the same phone. So overall doing pretty well just with the overall benchmarks, but the heat of them definitely can get hot randomly on iOS 26 for no reason, but they seem to be holding up much better on iOS 18.6. So let's go ahead and wait for this to complete, and then we'll take a closer look at the overall scores. And you'll see they just completed with the benchmarks 3,485 for single core on iOS 18.6 compared to 3,378 on iOS 26 Beta 4. iOS 18.6 also has a higher multi-core score at 8,701 compared to 8,428. So overall, well within the margin of error, what we would expect for both devices. And of course, usually when you're not running a beta, you'll get slightly higher scores, but in general, pretty good. Now, if you're wondering if you should install iOS 18.6 or iOS 26 Beta 4 or Public Beta 1, iOS 18.6 I can definitely recommend at this point. It's late in the year. It should be the best version of iOS 18 ever, and that's what we're getting from most people as far as battery life and more we'll take a look at in a moment. However, if you're trying to solve an issue or looking for a perfect or better experience, do not install iOS 26 Beta 4 or Public Beta 1. They're still stuttery, there's still issues, they'll crash, it gets a little bit hot, has bad battery life, so overall it's still something they're working on, and that's typical with early betas. So at this point, maybe wait for Beta 2, see how that goes, but if you want something stable, go with iOS 18.6. When it comes to performance, I showed you that there a little bit. iOS 18.6 really has no issues for the most part. You can see just side by side. If we scroll, 18 is super smooth. In fact, when I picked it up, I noticed how smooth it was with ProMotion and everything else. So just swiping left to right, you'll see the overall experience is much smoother in general. And of course, opening apps and things seem to be fine. I haven't loaded music there, but if you wanted to maybe load the camera quickly, you wanted to get a photo, you'll see iOS 18.6 is slightly faster with that, so definitely pretty good. And on older devices, iOS 26 is definitely a lot worse for some people. So you'll see it on the iPhone 11. It's taking a while to load. If we scroll through, just in general, on older devices, it's not as fast, but that's typical as it has a slower processor. But in general, it's not a great experience yet. It's got some great features and updates, but we're still waiting for Apple to refine it a little bit more. When it comes to overall battery life, well, on iOS 18.6, it's been pretty great for a lot of people. Thanks to Abhishek for sending this in. This is on an iPhone 16e with 100% battery health and the charge limit set to 80%. So you'll see he had 3 hours and 41 minutes of screen on time, 47 minutes of screen off time, and is only down to 56%. He's barely used any battery and got great screen on time. So overall, it's doing quite well. There's only a few people that said battery life wasn't good on iOS 18.6. In fact, 92% of comments say battery is good or better or significantly improved compared to iOS 18.5. The other 8%, I would imagine, are still having things process in the background. But when it comes to iOS 26 Beta 4 or Public Beta 1, it's definitely a different story. And thanks to Chosen One on my Telegram channel for sending this in. This is on an iPhone 15 with 97% battery health. And you'll see they had 6 hours and 9 minutes of screen on time, 11 minutes of screen off time, and used 47% of their battery. However, they charged during this time. You can see additional information here. Again, 2 hours and 44 minutes with pretty terrible battery life overall. Now, when it comes to my battery life, let's go ahead and take a look. So we'll go to battery health, and you'll see I'm down to 96% with 282 cycles. So overall, if we take a look at what it is today, it's not very good at all. 1 hour and 48 minutes of screen active time, 1 hour and 26 minutes of screen idle time, along with charging the phone as well. Yesterday, you can see random charges. This was sometimes when I was in the car. The day before, 5 hours of screen active time with a lot of charging. I'm not getting through the day with one charge. It's pretty terrible overall, and I'm down to 70% with very little usage today, under 2 hours. So just keep in mind, if you wanted to try out the betas, they're not that great yet. I would expect them to get much better in the future, though. Now, as far as what you had to say about the overall experience, let's take a look at some of your comments. Jay Lucan said, notification stacking is stuttering on my iPhone 12 with iOS 18.6. Tried restoring via iTunes using DFU mode, but it's still glitchy. Apple Tech 6326 said, I'm on iOS 18.6 on my 16 Pro Max, and this has to be the best iOS version so far. Battery is insane, and it's running super smooth. So far, I have no complaints. UFC Fan 777 said, was on iOS 26 Public Beta 1 on my iPhone 16 Pro Max and faced a lot of stutters and lags after some time of using. Found a couple of small bugs but couldn't stand the stutters and lag anymore, so I had to downgrade to iOS 18.6. And so far, it's one of the most stable iOS versions I've ever used in a long time. That is what iOS 18 should have been from the start. TTS292 said, iOS 26 Public Beta 1, Developer Beta 4 have been working absolutely flawless on my iPhone 11. I haven't had any bugs or issues so far aside from the voiceover glitch, but that's probably going to be fixed with another update. But aside from that, battery life has been great. Wi-Fi connectivity is smooth, opening apps is faster, opening and loading web pages are smooth, Bluetooth connectivity is great with no issues whatsoever. Overall, this has been a great update as my iPhone 11 has been getting used to heavy updates like these. I'm looking forward to what Apple has planned next, and I can't wait until the final release in September. Danny BMB said, updated to iOS 26 Public Beta on iPhone 16 Pro Max, and it's slower. It feels like I'm on 60 Hz display sometimes, and some apps are laggy. It's pretty bad. It worked flawless on iOS 18.5. I hope Apple solves this problem, and also the battery life seems like it's dropping a little bit faster. Magnificent Production said, I'm actually pleased to say I have no bugs. I'm using iOS 26 Beta 4 on my 15 Pro Max. Sonic SOGMC says, on iOS 26 Developer Beta 4 on 16 Pro. Apple provided feedback. They fixed a couple items I reported. Ecobee thermostat now connects to HomeKit. I was able to get iPad to find it on Developer Beta 3, and they fixed the blank toolbar button on Notes. I responded with another minor issue. This release was a good one. We'll switch to public betas now. Now, iOS 26, of course, needs a little bit of work. We should be a few betas off from a final release. Basically, we should see the final release in mid-September, and I would expect maybe 3 to 4 more betas before that, and then an RC. So at this point, there's definitely a little ways to go, but I can't believe we're just a month away or so. But it looks like something Apple's really refining as they keep changing liquid glass, changing the overall settings, and a little things as far as refinement with camera and more. And so that's everything with iOS 26 Beta 4 and iOS 18.6. Let me know what your favorite feature of iOS 26 is, or if you're staying on iOS 18.6 until maybe later after September. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.